Imagine if tomorrow your taxes, your salary, your speed limit, even your health care were all decided by one roll of a dice. You'd probably call that insane. But after today's story, you might realize we've been closer to that reality than anyone likes to admit. You wake up one morning, make your coffee, check your phone, and find out the government just passed a new law overnight. Speed limit on highways is now 42 miles per hour, not 55, not 65, 42. And the reason? Nobody knows. Nobody can explain it. The senator who sponsored the bill just shrugs and says it felt right. The guy responsible for the speed of every car on every highway in the country, and his entire justification is, it felt right. That's not a democracy. That's your uncle making dinner without a recipe. Now here's where it gets uncomfortable. What if that's not actually that far from the truth? What if some of the most powerful laws ever written were basically decided by people, guessing, by timing, by who happened to be in a bad mood, by the political version of rolling a dice and hoping for the best? For real bro here, where we say what no one else will. And before you assume this is going to be some boring civics lesson, I need you to hold on for 1 second. Because what we're actually about to talk about is not politics. It's about something much more terrifying. It's about the human need to believe that the systems controlling your life make sense, even when they absolutely, spectacularly do not. That realization, by the way, is going to hit differently by the end of this video. I promise. Part 1. The most important decisions in history were made by tired people in rooms with bad lighting. Here's something nobody teaches you in school. Most of the laws you live under right now were not created by brilliant people. Most major legislation was written under extreme time pressure, by exhausted humans who hadn't slept, surrounded by other exhausted humans who were all trying to win an argument. The kind of environment where someone makes a typo in a bill and it just stays there for 60 years because nobody wants to go back and fix it. There's actually a famous concept in political science called garbage can decision-making. It's exactly what it sounds like. Problems, solutions, and decision-makers all collide together randomly, like items floating around in a garbage can. And whatever sticks together in that moment becomes policy. Not because it was the smartest answer, not because it was the most researched answer, but because the timing happened to line up. So, when you imagine the laws governing your life being decided by a roll of the dice, you might think that sounds like chaos. But here's the uncomfortable realization waiting for you. In many real historical cases, a literal dice roll might have produced a more honest system. At least with dice, nobody pretends it was genius. Take tax brackets. The specific percentages you pay on your income did not come from a mathematical formula that some genius economist cracked over decades of research. Many of those numbers came from political negotiations where people literally just picked figures that sounded reasonable in the moment. How about 37%? Sure, make it 37. That's it. That's the entire scientific process behind the number that determines how much of your paycheck you keep. And now here's the part that should make you deeply, uncomfortably curious. If random chance already influences major laws more than we admit, what would actually happen if we just made it official? What if we rolled the dice on purpose? Part 2. Okay, but what if the dice actually ruled and life was accidentally amazing? Alright, so let's actually run this experiment. Every major law, decided by a 6-sided dice. Or maybe a 20-sided dice for the more complex stuff because clearly the government needs options. Monday morning, Congress rolls a 6. Minimum wage just became $30 an hour. Half the country is celebrating. The other half is panicking. Small business owners are doing the math on napkins. Economists are giving interviews with deeply stressed facial expressions. And somewhere a billionaire is staring at his phone trying to figure out if this is real. Tuesday, they roll a 2. Tax holiday for the next 6 months. Nobody pays taxes. The government's budget is now held together with the equivalent of tape and prayers. But also, everyone suddenly has more money, and the economy weirdly booms because people are spending, and for about 3 weeks the country feels oddly euphoric. Wednesday, they rolls 5. Speed limits on all highways are now determined by the driver's birth month. January babies get 55. June babies get 90. This immediately causes the most chaotic traffic situation in American history, and also the most creative excuse ever invented for speeding tickets. Now here's where the prediction break comes in. Because you were probably expecting me to say that this would be pure catastrophic disaster and the whole point is that random lawmaking is bad. But that's not actually where this is going. Because here's the thing that's quietly unsettling. Some of those random dice roll laws, statistically, a meaningful number of them would land better than what we currently have. Not because random is smart, but because the current system isn't as deliberate as you think it is. And when something pretends to be rational while secretly being chaotic, it causes more damage than something that's honestly just chaotic. At least with dice, you know what you're dealing with. But then the dice rolls a 1. And that's where things start getting very dark, very fast. Part 3. The one that nobody talks about. What happens when the dice gives power to the wrong thing? So you've been enjoying the chaos. You've been kind of laughing at the speed limit situation. Maybe you even briefly considered that a random tax holiday sounds better than your current reality. And that's exactly when the dice does what dice always eventually do. It rolls the 1, and the 1 could mean anything. Historical precedent gives us plenty of examples of what happens when laws get decided not by careful deliberation, but by whoever had power in that specific moment. Whoever was afraid of the right thing at the right time. Whoever needed a quick political win before an election. The Volstead Act of 1919, which enforced prohibition, the complete ban on alcohol in America, wasn't primarily driven by deep moral consensus or comprehensive research on addiction and public health. It was driven by a political coalition that happened to have enough votes at the right historical moment, while millions of ordinary people were distracted by the aftermath of a world war. The result? Organized crime exploded. Speakeasies thrived. Al Capone basically became more powerful than some senators. The government rolled a 1 on purpose and it took 13 years to roll again and fix it. Or think about mandatory minimum sentencing laws which lock judges into specific prison terms regardless of individual case circumstances. These were passed during a specific political climate of fear and urgency. The people who drafted them genuinely believed they were rational. Decades of consequences later, even many of the original supporters admitted the dice had landed somewhere unexpected. Here's the psychological horror that nobody wants to sit with. When a dice roll produces a bad outcome, everyone can see it's random and they try to fix it. But when a bad law is passed by deliberate people with rational arguments, it becomes almost impossible to challenge because it comes wrapped in the illusion of authority. Random chaos is honest about being chaos. A bad law sold as expertise is chaos disguised as a plan. And disguised chaos is the most dangerous kind, because people stop questioning it. They assume someone smarter than them figured it out. You are now trapped inside a system you thought was designed. And the trap is, it was never fully designed at all. Part 4. The part where you realize you've been participating in the world's longest improv show. Okay, deep breath. Because this is where I need you to genuinely sit with something uncomfortable. You know that feeling when you're at work and there's a process everyone follows, like a specific way to file documents or a specific format for a report, and one day you ask why and nobody actually knows? Someone goes, I think Dave started doing it that way, and Dave left the company in 2011 and nobody has his number. But the process remains. Everyone follows the ghost of Dave's decision. Now scale that up to an entire civilization. A significant portion of modern law is the ghost of decisions made by people who are dead, operating in historical contexts that no longer exist, under social pressures that have completely changed, with scientific understanding that has been entirely replaced. The ghost of Dave is writing your legislation. Here's the funniest and most terrifying human contradiction in all of this. Humans are pattern recognition machines. We instinctively assume that if something exists and has existed for a long time, it must exist for a good reason. Psychologists call this the Chesterton's fence problem. Don't remove a fence until you understand why it was built. Reasonable advice. But we've taken it so far that we now have invisible fences everywhere that nobody can see, and we're all walking very carefully around empty air because that's where the fence used to be. The dice, in this metaphor, doesn't care about the old fence. The dice rolls and goes, there's nothing there. Walk straight. And half the people are horrified. And the other half just walk through and nothing bad happens, and they look at the people still walking around the empty air and go, what are you doing? But here's the contradiction that nobody wants to admit. The people walking around the empty air, they're not stupid. They're doing something deeply human. They're trusting the accumulated social memory of past experience. Part 5. This was never really about the dice. Okay, here it is. The entire time we've been talking about dice and laws and Dave's ghost processes, we've been orbiting around something much more personal than government policy. Something that's actually about you, specifically, and how you make decisions in your own life. Because here's the theory, reveal that changes everything. The reason we're so unsettled by the idea of laws being decided randomly is not because we hate randomness. We roll dice all the time. We flip coins. We make gut decisions. We say I'll figure it out as I go. We change our minds. We contradict ourselves constantly. We are walking, breathing engines of semi-random decision-making dressed in the costume of rationality. The reason dice-based lawmaking horrifies us is because we need to believe that the systems bigger than us are more rational than we are. We need the government, the legal system, the economy, to be operating at a higher level of clarity and intelligence than we personally manage on a Tuesday morning. Because if the systems that control our lives are just as random and improvised as we are, then nothing is holding the whole thing up. And yet the actual evidence of history suggests that the systems are mostly just us, having meetings under pressure with incomplete information, making calls that felt reasonable at the time, and sometimes were and sometimes catastrophically weren't. So the real question is not what happens when law is random. The real question is, what do you do when you realize that the authority you've been handing your trust to is actually just a more organized version of the same guessing that you do every day? Because here's the brutally honest answer. The people who changed history were not the ones who waited for a perfect rational system they were the ones who looked at the empty air where the old fence used to be, realized it wasn't holding anything back anymore, and walked straight through. Not because they had perfect information. Not because they had rolled a guaranteed 6. Because they made a choice with what they had, and adjusted when they landed. And isn't that just the most annoying realization? Make your best call. Stay flexible and stop pretending you needed a system's permission to think. The dice was always in your hand. You were just watching everyone else roll it. Alright, comment section. I have a very specific question for you and I want honest answers. What is one rule or norm in your life that you follow every single day and have never once stopped to ask why it started? Could be at work, could be at home, could be something your parents told you was just the right way. Drop it below, because I have a strong suspicion that at least half of you are walking around the ghost of Dave's fence, and you don't even know it yet. And if you somehow watched this entire video about dice and laws and invisible fences and thought, yes, this is exactly the level of organized chaos I want in my life on a regular basis, well, there's a button somewhere on this page that would let you make that a permanent situation. Not saying you should press it, just noting that the option exists. Much like a dice sitting on a table. It only does something if someone picks it up. That was either the most profound subscribed CTA in YouTube history or the most embarrassing one. Honestly, both. And that's very on brand.